In a new interview with the New York Times, Republican vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance was asked directly if Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, just as he was in last week's debate. He was actually given 5 chances to answer that very straightforward question and, well, see for yourself.
Do you believe he lost the 2020 election?
I think that Donald Trump and I have both raised a number of issues with the 2020 election, but we're focused on the future.
Senator, yes or no?
Okay.
Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Let me ask you a question. Is it okay that big technology companies censored the Hunter Biden laptop story?
Senator Vance, I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
Did big technology companies censor a story?
I'm going to ask you again. Did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
And I've answered your question with another question. You answer my question and I'll answer yours.
I have asked this question repeatedly. It is something that is very important for the American people to know. There is no proof, legal or otherwise, that Donald Trump did not lose the 2020 election.
You're repeating a slogan rather than engaging with what I'm saying.
I'm joined now by Rick Tyler, MSNBC political analyst, Republican strategist, and president of Foundry Road, and Valencia Johnson, former Biden-Harris 2020 senior advisor, founder of 1063 West Broad, and author of the upcoming book, Flip the Tables. So, Valencia, I'll start with you. He's a guy who is famously known in a very important book for flipping tables. And he was betrayed by a guy who denied him 3 times. Yeah. And then we just saw J.D. Vance deny the truth 5 times.
Yeah.
What on earth could he be thinking in giving this answer still? Because, look, regardless of what Republicans may believe, and I know that there's a reason to feed the base, this was turned into a campaign ad 15 minutes after the debate. It is a losing answer to deny that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. What the heck is J.D. Vance doing?
Well, the funny thing is he's trying to not be the Judas for Donald Trump, but he's clearly continuing to have this non-answer and redirect because he wants to remain loyal to Donald Trump, because we know what happens when you're no longer loyal to Donald Trump. But you make a really good point that he did not answer a question about a truth, right? And this is actually an issue that, quite frankly, a lot of independents care about, and people who are tired of Donald Trump actually care about. That big lie is the reason we had an insurrection right across the street from here. That big lie caused a lot of this violent rhetoric and actual, like, intimidation of people who are working the polling locations, of people who are trying to get out the vote. So you have people really scared because folks are continuing to perpetuate this big lie that has been founded by several people, several states, several attorney generals. You have even Republicans that have said this is a lie. We have to move past this. And yet this is someone who cannot answer the question. Matter of fact, at this point, he should just say, you know what, Donald Trump did win the 2020 election, because he clearly doesn't want to say the fact that he did not win in 2020.
Rick, when I look at this, I keep thinking, look, any campaign can be criticized, but one thing I've seen that is being very well done by the Harris-Walz campaign, they're great on rapid response, right? 15 minutes after that debate, when J.D. Vance gets a terrible answer, they got a commercial. 15 minutes after Donald Trump says America's going to turn into Detroit, they've got an ad that they're running in downtown Detroit saying, oh, yeah, well, et cetera, et cetera. Is the Trump campaign not recognizing that they're feeding the Harris opposition research? Do they not recognize that they're giving her rapid response team easy layups? Because it seems to me that with only 25 days left, you would start to tone down your rhetoric and not give them opportunities for easy shots.
Of course they recognize it. These aren't stupid people, but they are serving someone who is a malignant narcissist. And there's no, if you disagree with Trump, think of all the years that Trump was given this information. Don't do that. Don't say that. Don't do this. Don't do that. Those people are all gone.
Right.
So everybody's around Donald Trump is just a yes person. Is just going to say yes, 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 yes. And J.D. Vance can't tell a simple truth because he's got to contort himself, as many Republicans do, over a simple answer. And the dangerous part is when you undermine, look, if they were cheating in the election, I would be the first to criticize it.
Right.
There's no question about that, because that is a fundamental undermining of our democratic system. But when you have an accusation without proof, and you undermine people's trust in that institution, and when you do that, that is absolutely what resulted in January 6th.
Right.
And then you have people like Ted Cruz who stood in the wreckage of that insurrection and perpetuated the lie that got us there.
And the erosion actually that it does to American society in general, we see that with the hurricane response, right? If
Absolutely.
you can convince people that there's a vast intergalactic conspiracy to steal an election, then you can convince people.
Yes, and it's so easy. Look at the massive area. By the way, those are red counties, and that's going to hurt Donald Trump. But look at the massive area. The government can't be everywhere, which is why the churches go down. But now you have white supremacists going down and making news, saying FEMA's not here, so we're helping out, and all they're there to do is post videos for recruitment. So, yeah, it's very easy to undermine institutions, and they do it with the Justice Department. Is the Justice Department perfect? No, it's made up of human beings. Can it be better and reformed? Absolutely. But when you undermine it, now you have a system where
nobody trusts anything.
No, the law doesn't matter.
Well, in the piece that I'm glad you brought this up about the undermining our institutions, when we get through Donald Trump, and I pray and believe that we will hopefully get through him and we will have a Madam President and Kamala Harris. But even after Donald Trump is no longer part of American politics, this distrust of institutions is still going to be there.
Yes.
And that is the extremely scary thing, because then in emergency response situations, like in these hurricanes, you have people not actually engaging with the federal government to get the aid that they need, not believing that their members of Congress or that their governor is going to put partisan politics aside and actually do what is best for them. And that distrust of our institutions is actually dismantling our institutions. And that is the piece that, I don't really care for Liz Cheney. I don't really care for a lot of these Republicans that have come out for Kamala Harris, but I will give them the credit that they want to make sure the institutions still stand, because of this rhetoric that J.D. Vance is continuing to perpetuate is the reason that the American people, half of the electorate, is continuing to sow this discord that is extremely dangerous and going to get so many of us killed.
There's a movie that is dropping today called The Apprentice, which is played, Donald Trump is played by Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier. I want to play a clip from this movie and get your all thoughts right after that.
Yes, hello, Judy. This is Donald Trump. I'm very excited to talk to you.
Be excited.
Donald, now that the lawsuit is behind you, what do you want to do next?
Well, I intend to acquire the Commodore, and I'm planning on making it the best and the finest building in the city, maybe the country, in the world. Judy, in the world, it's going to be the finest building in the world. It's going to be a spectacular hotel, absolutely spectacular, first class.
We've got just a couple of seconds. Rick, what does this tell us about how easily a narcissist like Trump is manipulated?
Pretty easily. I'm trying to remember the other character in the car. That's
Roy Cohn.
That's obviously Roy Cohn.
Yes, Roy Cohn. Yes,
Right.
he was the eldest boy on Succession.
Yeah.
Alencia, just this scene alone with this guy having to be coached in how to talk, what does that tell us about probably the Donald Trump that we're dealing with today, even though that was about 30 years ago?
I mean, this is partly like art actually telling us what reality is, and we know how powerful pop culture is, and it is narrating to us who Donald Trump is.
The reality is far more unbelievable than
that's totally true, right?
Exactly.
Right? We're like living
never
this.
past us.
That's actually a smarter conversation than most of the ones he had.